You guys are in for a special treat today, and not only because I'm not preaching, but we have one of our own is going to be sharing his testimony this morning, Brother JJ. And I want to introduce JJ this way. If you know JJ at all, you know that he is one of the most genuine, sincere, nicest people you will ever meet in your life. I mean, this guy is the real deal. So several months ago, in fact, he'll share a little bit about this as a part of his testimony, but he had a horrific accident. It was New Year's Eve, right?
Yes.
And so a few days after this event, Chase and I went to go visit him in the hospital because that's what pastors are supposed to do, right? Go visit sick people in the hospital. So we go in there literally just a few days after this, and so we go in there intending to pray for JJ, encourage him. And I remember walking out of there thinking, I did nothing for JJ. He blessed and ministered me. Because we walk in there, and I mean, he at this point, I mean, they weren't even sure if he was going to lose his leg or not. He had swelling in his brain. I mean, it was bad, and he'll share some of that in his testimony. But we walk in there, and just the positivity that he had, the outlook he had. I mean, he was just so full of hope and encouragement. And I remember walking out of there thinking, man, I did nothing for him. I was blessed and ministered to. That's just the kind of person JJ is. And so, we just came out of a 14-week study on the book of James, right? And one of the things I said on repeat, right, the whole theme and purpose of James is how can we have genuine living faith? In fact, James tells us in the intro of his letter, he tells us that we are to face suffering, right? That suffering has a way of building endurance, right? Making our faith genuine. And so if we want to have genuine, deep, real faith, we're going to have to go through some stuff. And JJ is a perfect testament to this. That he's been through some things, and he's come out the other side. And so I've asked JJ to come. We've never done anything like this before. Maybe we never will again. Who knows? But I asked JJ.
Take the weight off my shoulders
here.
here.
All I need. But I asked JJ, I said, would you just come and just share your testimony and encourage us? This is a kind of a living example of what we've studied the past 14 weeks in James, right? And so JJ is not an example of perfect faith by any means, but this is an example of genuine,
truth in that.
Sincere faith, right? That if you go through some suffering and you allow God to bring you through it, it's going to develop endurance that will last, right? And so I'm really excited about this. Will you please give our brother a hand of warm welcome?
Good morning. I'm gonna grab this stool because I'm not supposed to be walking yet, but I am. Wow, what an intro. I got to meet this guy you're talking about. So my name is Jeff Taggart, Jr. I go by JJ for Jeffrey Jr. It's more simple that way. And I can't forget my name. It's tattooed on my arms even. So I'm really blessed to be asked to come up and speak today. My testimony, it's not something that I've really prepared because honestly I've lived it. The test in my testimony, there's been a lot of tests over the last almost 38 years. Kim asked me this morning if I was going to start with my birth. So that was November 17th, 1979 at 4:06 a.m. I made it in time for breakfast. And that'll be this upcoming Friday if anybody wants to join me for breakfast at 4:06. I don't like to miss meals. In short, so I'm going to give you the lowdown of a guy that has suffered. I'm going to talk to you about somebody that was lost. We know at one point in time in Moses' life, he was lost. We know that through the book of Job never lost his faith and continued to stay strong. And I'm nowhere near as good as Job. I've lost my faith in my life, and I'm going to talk about that and talk about regaining it and living it and trying to literally walk in faith every day. So in short, my story starts when I was 16 years old. I started I took the SAT. I had a teacher that told me when I took the SAT that I wasn't going to amount to anything in life because if you've ever taken one of those social tests, it's broke down in sections, and at the end of each section, I would, instead of sitting there barely having any time left, I rushed through and I fell asleep at the end of each section. And she told me I didn't take it serious and I wasn't going to amount to anything. At the time, a 1600 was the perfect score, and not many people ever got that. I missed 5 questions on the entire test. And when I went and took her my score, I'll never forget, because I said, I'm never going to amount to anything, but I'm not going to be a teacher. I ended up in the office for that. I had a 1580 on the SAT at the age of 16. I was accepted to college. So freshman, sophomore year of high school, and then I moved out of the house, moved 8 hours away, and started my life on my own at 16 in college. I was a hard charger. I was accepted into a fun program down at in Beaumont at Lamar University. And there were 160 of us from age 14 to 17 that were freshmen and sophomores in college. We were all nationally gifted children, if you will. And that's what we were. We were children trying to live a somewhat adult life. And the 160 of us had a great time. Most of us, we all helped each other to study. We were trying to prove the professors wrong that said, kids can't be in my class. You're gonna have too hard of a time. And we were keeping good grades through all of that. The last week of my freshman year, and the first week of May, right outside of my dorm room, less than from me to the wall, a young man named Gabe hung himself. And my life kind of forever changed at that moment. We had started the program with 160 kids. We ended the program with 157 kids. Because in the days following, we'd have 2 more die in a tragic accident. And we were given the opportunity to actually graduate early from the program, if you will, because it was supposed to be a 2-year program, but a bunch of us had a really hard time with that. And I moved to a small Baptist university, Brownwood, Texas, the town I grew up in, and had a good scholarship to go there, and was going to still follow the line that was kind of set before me. Pre-law and law, and at the age of 18, I witnessed a car accident on a Saturday morning, on an icy morning, and I actually saved a 3-week-old child who had been born 6 weeks premature, so should have still been in the belly. And I'll never forget Monday morning going into the Dean of Political Science and History, same guy, small school. I walked in and I said, I'm not going to go to law school. I'd already taken the LSAT and decided that I actually wanted to go into emergency medicine. He asked me, why don't you want to go to law school? And I said, because somewhere along the line in law, somebody always gets hurt. At least in emergency medicine, I have a fighting chance to help somebody. So that's about half my life ago now that I made that choice, that I wanted to be a helper. And I wanted to try and use my hands to aid in people's recovery in life. Fast forward a couple years, and at the age of 20, I decided to join the service due to another tragic event in my life. My life has I've witnessed a bunch of tragic events. But I walked into an Army recruiter's one Monday morning, and I said, I want to be a combat medic. I want to leave in 14 days. That's 10 business days. If you can make it happen with a sign-on bonus and rank, I'll sign. Otherwise, I'm going to go next door. And if you've ever been into a military recruiting office, by the way, if you're a veteran, happy Veterans Day. But if you've ever been into one of those and you tell them you're going to go next door, they take it as an insult. And they're like, I'll never forget Sergeant First Class Lopez. She was a hard charger, and she just looked over and she said, get over here, sit down, we're going to make it happen. I left 11 days later, and I spent my 21st birthday in basic training. This was all prior to September 11th. And long story short, September 11 rolls around. I'm at Fort Hood, Texas, in 167 Armor as one of the 36 medics in the entire battalion of about 1,800 men, and we get orders. I'll never forget the blanket order we got on December 2nd. The reason I remember it was my dad's 49th birthday. And I'd taken leave to go be home with my dad. Turns out I get called back off of leave so we can be read an order that we're about to deploy. We knew it wasn't Afghanistan. That war was already going. The order would have said so. Instead, it said somewhere in Southeast Asia, and it's like we all have a clue where we're going. So I deployed. I can tell you when I deployed, I left a boy, and I came back a very shattered man. Prior to my time on deployment, I can tell you that I don't think I'd ever sat down and drank more than a six-pack in my life. Somewhere along the lines of deployment, I'd love to tell you that in a country far away that in General Order Number 1 says you won't drink, we got a hold of a lot of alcohol. Some of it was, we actually had to do a flame test to make sure it wasn't bootlegged and we weren't going to go blind. But I started drinking. I wanted to forget who I was, what I had been a part of. And somewhere along the 16-month deployment, I lost who I was. And I lost who God had intended for me to be. I went, during my deployment, I was on some pretty fun missions. I call them fun. They were crazy. There's nothing fun about war, but if you can find something to laugh at, even if it's the smallest thing in the worst of time. My brother Flip and I were talking earlier. If you can find some laughter in life, your soul's going to be a little, more at peace and more at ease. I came back from Iraq and was within months sent to Landstuhl, Germany, to run a gastroenterology clinic. And I was sent there mainly for physical rehab because I had been injured in Iraq. It's kind of ironic that, and I'll get more into the tree in a minute, but in Iraq I was shot twice. I was blown up. I was stabbed in the chest. And none of that killed me. I pulled shrapnel out of my own body with the help of other medics, and that didn't kill me. But during all that time, I forgot the most important thing. I forgot to praise God because God had saved me. He still had a mission for me in this world. But I came home and went to Landstuhl, and then it turns out they sent me to Walter Reed as an inpatient for, I was there close to 5.5 months, and that was during the time, for those of us old enough to remember, 2004, 2005, when Walter Reed was blowing up all over the news how bad it was. It really was. And luckily that hospital is now shut down. It was close to a 100-year-old hospital trying to take care of all the boys and girls from Iraq and Afghanistan. And they weren't prepared for it. Nobody can be prepared for war, once again. But I found myself as an inpatient drinking alcohol. There was one thing that I tried to do. I tried to drink to black out because I tried to drink to forget. I never drank for good times. Never did. I drank in solace, and I drank so that hopefully I wouldn't remember who I was or what I had been through. In short, December 8th, 2006, I was medically discharged, medically retired from the military. I was 26 years old, and I had to try and find what was my purpose in life. And I found my purpose normally sitting in a room alone drinking. It's a dark place when you do that. The one thing I would find every morning, I'd wake up and I'd say, oh, it didn't help. Time to start over. And I was kind of a Groundhog Day for almost 2 years. Along the line of those 2 years, after roughly 2 years, I met a young lady who had actually helped to turn my life around. And her name's Catherine. Most of you know her. She is my better half, I can tell you that. We're also celebrating 8 years of marriage today, and that's because of God. Eight years ago today in Las Vegas, we were picked up by a guy that looked like Elvis and taken to the wedding chapel. True story. Yeah, that was fun. No. He was just a limo driver. So I meet Catherine, and I can tell you from the start, we've had a rocky start. Our relationship started out rocky because of my drinking, and there was no beauty in that. The beauty in my relationship was my wife, and her faith in me. If I cry, I'll apologize now, but they're tears of joy. I said we had a rocky start. She left me one day when I was drunk and just left me, and turned around, and over some time we got back together. We ended up getting married. Really, one of the greatest joys in my life. The second greatest joy in my life was my son, the birth of Jeffrey Hugh Taggart III. He goes by our middle name. We get married, and pretty much from the start, Catherine wants me to quit drinking and lets me know that. And I'm going to say that I hid my drinking there, but there was really no hiding it. I'd wait till she went to work, and I would start, and I would turn around, and by the time she would get home, I'm trying to convince her that I hadn't been, and no, I had. She knew. Fast forward a little bit, Hugh's born, and I started earnestly actually trying. I started going to some meetings of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the tattoo in my hand. But I had really forgotten one thing in trying to get sober, and I'd forgot to ask God for help. In Iraq, I personally felt that God had just kind of left me to the wind because of the things that I'd been through. I'd forgotten that, no, God had saved me through every one of the horrific events that I was a part of. God had his hand wrapped around me, and I just didn't see that. Instead, I'll be honest, I had a poor, pitiful me, and I felt the victim. It turns out each one of us that were there were the victim of war. And there's nothing beautiful about combat. At times I say combat was some of the best times of my life because I try to hang on to the fun that we had. We did have fun. We did some really not so intelligent things as a bunch of young boys over in a foreign country. But combat, or during the time of combat, again, I felt that God had kind of abandoned me. And as turns out, in 2010, my family, my parents, myself, and Catherine started a paint-your-own pottery shop in the colony. And sorry, this kind of bounces around some. The thoughts in my head are crazy, I promise. I'm trying to keep them in track. But we started a pottery shop in the colony. And we made friends with a lot of the local residents of the colony. And I can tell you, minus 2 funerals, since 2003, I had not been inside the doors of a church. I was honestly the guy that thought if I walk inside the doors of a church, wherever it's at, lightning's going to strike me, and bad things are going to happen. But this beautiful young 10-year-old girl invited me to church one day for an award ceremony. For something that she had, a program she'd been a part of for a couple years, and all the hard work and dedication. And it was on a Saturday. Catherine had to work, and I'll never forget because I got Hugh dressed up. I dressed up. And we go to this award ceremony, and I let Hugh actually walk in first because I'm like, if lightning's going to strike, it's going to hit me, not him. True story. He walks in, and the greeters are like, you going to come in? I'm like, whoa, come on in. Okay. So I walk in. I went home that night and I told Catherine, I was like, this is a really welcoming church. We should go try it out. And I praised that young 10-year-old. She's now, 15, 16? That young girl actually made me realize that church was a welcoming place again, that I needed to start trying to get back to God. So back to starting to get sober. I started to get sober. And again, even though I'm going to church, I haven't asked God for help yet because I haven't turned my will over to the care of God. And I was having a few relapses. From time to time, I would slip. And one of them, November 20th of 2013, talk about a relapse. I woke up with silver bracelets. Anybody knows what that means? It's not good. Woke up in jail. I totaled a vehicle. And luckily, I hadn't hurt anybody but me. More of my pride than anything else. And I'll never forget, waking up in the jail cell and kind of coming to, and I'm like, oh man, this is not going to be good. There's going to be ramifications. There should be ramifications. And I don't think I'd even seen the JP yet, the magistrate, and I get told, Jeffrey Taggart, and I said, yeah, come on, you got a visitor. And that beautiful young bride of mine was there to see me and to tell me not to come home, just stay in jail. She was leaving me. And I remember going back to my cell, and it was in the men's huge cell, and turns out all those guys they're looking at me because I just start bawling. And I get out a few hours later, and I set up with a neighbor across the street to stay with the neighbor because we have Hugh, and I watched him when Catherine would go to work, and we kind of set a deal up that I could come over as soon as I could watch her drive off, and then I had to be out of the house as soon as she got home. And I remember on December 23rd, 2013, the Christmas service at the church that we were attending. Catherine said, come on, do you want to go? All via text. Yes, I want to go. And I remember walking down at an altar call. And I remember I didn't know the lady that I was walking up to. Turns out she's in charge of all the prayer ministry there. And I just walked up and she grabbed me. And I just started bawling. I had elders in the church start walking up and laying hands on me and speaking tongues. And she is praying a prayer into my life at that moment that literally changed my life. She, without me saying a word of what I needed, the help that I needed, she was actually talking about pulling the demons out of my life to put me back on the right path. And for everything I had in me was I laid it on that altar. And for the first time ever, I asked God to help me. I asked God to come into my life and to change me. And I can tell you that since December 23rd of 2013, I have not had a want or a will to drink because I asked God to come into my life. Yes. In doing that, the most beautiful thing happened. In the rooms of AA, NA, all those, you hear about a psychic change. I never realized what a psychic change was. And over a little bit of period, Catherine and I sat down, and I'll never forget because Catherine had this list. And I'll be honest, it was a list of demands. Number one was I had to get a year of sobriety before she decided to actually stay married to me. And then all these other things that were listed. And most of them, I'm going to tell you what, they were work. They were work. The one thing I tried to hide from was work. It's a dirty 4-letter word. I didn't want to do the work. I had to attend church. I had to attend this group called Celebrate Recovery. And I'm like, who can celebrate recovery? I'm not in a mindset I can't celebrate recovery right now. Catherine went to the lead pastor of the church, who then sent her over to a beautiful lady named Dr. Nisi, who's 30 plus years in recovery counseling and helping people get on the right track of life. I'll never forget because Catherine tells Dr. Nisi, we've tried everything. And Dr. Nisi said, you haven't tried me. It's like, well, you got a point. We haven't. And Dr. Nisi, one of the first things she told me is, you've got to go to Celebrate Recovery. Go every Thursday night. Commit yourself to that. Commit yourself to doing the work, JJ. And I owe my sobriety to 3 people. I owe my sobriety to God, to Don Green and Celeste, my friends that are back here with my wife tonight. God obviously led me where I needed to be, put me right in the hands that I needed to be in. Don, accountability. There's still some nights that I'll text him late at night and he'll respond. I came to find out that, as I said, the number one thing on that list, Catherine had given me a contract and I signed it, she signed it. But the number one thing was to stay sober for a year. I came to find out somewhere about 7 or 8 months that somehow she had given me credit for a year, and we were committed to working on our marriage and saving our marriage. Again, we celebrate 8 years today, and they haven't all been happy years. But since I put my foot forward and I put my will into the care of God, my life has changed forever. So fast forward a few years, and so next month I celebrate 4 years of sobriety. It only took me 7 years to get there. I'm not going to lie. I'm a slow learner. It takes me an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes sometimes. But fast forward to around this time last year, there's a couple, and I knew that they were starting to kind of struggle. And right around the holidays, nobody should struggle during the holidays. And oddly enough, like the week before Thanksgiving, I won $500 on a $3 scratch-off ticket. So I took Q and I taught him what Thanksgiving is about. We filled up a basket full of food and we took it to the family so they could celebrate Thanksgiving. Christmas, of course, comes right after Thanksgiving, and I knew that they were struggling and wanting to provide for their family. So I lined up that we could go cut some wood, sell some firewood. Obviously, it gets cold. People want firewood. What they don't tell you is, and if you've ever watched a show and you've heard about a widowmaker, they're real. I found that out. When a 50-foot red oak tree falls on you, and the only intelligent thing you can do is to take your chainsaw and throw it away from you. You can't jump out of the way because it's too big. I had 2 little glimpses of a memory. They've both been confirmed. I don't remember anything for the first 24 hours, other than those 2 3-second glimpses. One of them was with the paramedics, and then one of them was laying in the ER and just crying out to God. And one of Catherine's old co-workers was there. She had beat Catherine actually to the hospital because she lived closer, and she was there holding me, and I said, "I'm scared, Mom." And she said, "I'm scared too." I would wake up after a major leg surgery with metal protruding out of my leg. On New Year's Eve. What a way to celebrate the new year, right? We'd met our deductible in the first 15 minutes of this year, by the way. Being in ICU and seeing the bill and questioning some of the bill. So I wake up, and right away, the first thing that I can honestly remember doing was thanking God I was alive. Praising God for the doctors that he put in my life, the paramedics he put in my life, the friend that was there with me, that was intelligent enough to save my life, to call 911, because apparently I was saying, "I don't need help, I'm all right." I don't remember that. I was blacked out because God knew that I was in too much pain, and I shouldn't feel that. I laid in a hospital bed for the first 20 days of this year. Never really turned my TV on when I was alone. I would just lay there and talk to God. I have learned more this year in the last 300 plus days about myself and about life. My walk in faith has gotten so much stronger. I can't walk. God is the one that has given me the ability to walk, because I shouldn't be able to walk today. I had 3 skull fractures. The first 4 days I had a brain bleed and brain swelling. I remember the doctor the evening before saying, "If this is still present tomorrow, the brain surgeon, we're going in." He comes in the next morning after a CT and starts questioning everybody, and they start calling people in, and what's going on? I'm laying there in bed, I'm loopy. Can't really move because I'll get to that in a sec, but I'm laying there and I'm hearing the words, "He's not bleeding anymore. Where did this bleeding go?" And the fact is, God stopped the bleeding. I didn't need the surgery because God was in control. So I had the 3 skull fractures. I had a brain bleed for 4 days. I had 2 broken vertebrae, kind of compressed and shattered, T5 and T10. So when I was able to sit up or do anything, I had to wear this big bulky brace for the longest time. uncomfortable. Broken scapula, and then obviously my leg was opened up. I lay there and I talked to God a lot. Through the last 300 plus days, I've only questioned God once. I can tell you that. And it was in a moment of weakness. And God answered me. Because I said, God, why am I going through this? What I have come to find is the reason I'm going through this is because I have already been able to help others that are going through similar situations. And my story can help affect someone else. And if that's the reason I'm going through this, thank you, God. Thank you. Let me help somebody. From the selfish guy who used to want to drink alone in a dark room, who despised being alive. I used to question why. There's a new song out. It's called Why Not Me? And the fact is, I used to ask, why not me? Why did I not die in Iraq? And why did my brothers die? Today I know why. Because God had a purpose for me. God continues to have a purpose for me. He has a purpose for all of us. We all go through struggles. And there's nothing in life that's going to be easy. There's nothing in life that's always going to be beautiful. But the one thing I have come to find is when we can start a struggle with God on our team, we're going to win. And we're going to overcome it. And that struggle is going to, at the moment, it seems like a mountain to overcome. Folks, this whole year has felt like a mountain to overcome. But with Hugh, we call him Dr. Hugh because Hugh has given me shots in the belly of blood thinners. If you've ever had to have one, you know how bad they hurt. But Hugh wanted to be a part of it, and I said, go for it. I know it's going to hurt. So jam it, play darts, whatever. Here, let's teach you how to do it. But with Hugh by my side, she's laughing back there. It's a true story. He kind of did play darts. But with Dr. Hugh on my team, with Catherine on my team, with the prayers from so many people, prayers have been answered. Doctors, I don't think initially they thought my leg was going to be saved. There was a point in time when I'm not sure they thought I was going to be able to be physically saved. But the fact is, because I have been saved, I was saved. The fact is, because I continue, I love to use the military terminology here. I put, the right foot in front of the left foot, and I just keep going. I keep going, one foot in front of the other. Sometimes those days, it hasn't actually, it's only been the right foot that I've been able to go. But I keep putting my foot down, and I keep hitting the ground, and I keep doing the work. I keep praising God. From a guy that at one point in time shouldn't have been here, God has kept me here for a reason. It's my belief the reason God saved me, again, was so that I can reach out to others. One of the greatest gifts that Don and Celeste have taught me is to be there for others. If you knew how often my phone blows up from people in recovery, because I'm there for them. I hand my little business card out all the time to people in recovery, and I tell them, call me around the clock. I don't care if you need a shoulder. You need someone to talk you out of it. Call me. I'm that guy. I will do it. Because people have been there for me. What I've learned is service work is the most important thing in life. And no, you don't have to be in recovery to do service work. Service work is reaching out to somebody. If you see them in public and it just looks like they're having a bad day, make them smile. Give them a hug. Tell them God bless. And my favorite reply when somebody says God bless to me, I say, He does every day. That's why I'm here. He continues to bless me so that I can use the trials and tribulations that I've been through to help others. There's a really, maybe not everybody's on Facebook. I know some people are, but there's a great Facebook group that's for people with broken arms or broken legs and ankles. And there's been some times when I'm kind of down and I go in there and I realize I'm not the only one. Again, I used to think I was the only one. That's right. My broken leg brother right here. But I used to think that I was the only one in a lot of the things that had happened to me. I stopped to forget that no, I wasn't. God was right there with me. I was never alone. It was never just me. To the marriage, again, not all the days have been the greatest, but I sit before you with a wife that has never lost faith in me. And that has honestly been the greatest gift I've ever been given in this life. God put us together for a reason. Because when my heart had said, I can do this alone, she reminds me, no, you can't. When I thought I was at my lowest, I was able to look and see that she was right there with me, helping to pull me out of the ditch. It's like the story of the guy that walks by another man that's fallen in a ditch, and the guy says, help me, and the guy just keeps walking and says, I can't get down there and help you. The next guy walks by and he yells, help me, and he jumps down there with him. I'm the guy that jumps down there with you, and Catherine has been the person that's jumped down there with me into the pits of some ungrateful places, because she's been down there with me to help bring me up. Don specifically has been able to be there, and so he I think at times, and he may not know it, but he's jumped in that hole, and he's jumped further than I was in to push me up.
He brings the ladder.
There you go. Yeah, he brings the ladder. My goal in sharing my story today is kind of dual-parted. Number one, this whole year, it's been hard on Catherine and I, but God has put people in our lives that have helped us. I had to learn that my ego is my amigo, or my ego is not my amigo. I had to put pride aside and ask for help at times, and I'm not the guy that asks for help. I'm the guy that jumps in and tries to help everybody, but I forgot how to ask, and I've learned that this year. It's a great lesson. God, man, he's awesome in what he's done for me. Another thing that I hope people can learn, possibly just from my life, is when you put God first, regardless of the mountains you think you're about to overcome, they're molehills. They really are. I've looked at some of the things that I've had to overcome this year, and I'm like, wow, God, that's amazing. You delivered me through so much this year. And yet, there's still more to the story. I tell people all the time when they're like, man, that must have been so horrific to go through all this. And I'm like, it's just a test of my testimony. It's just another walk in my faith. And I hope that each of you can just continue your walk. If you have needs, I'm here for you. Never feel alone. God didn't abandon me when I thought he did. I personally abandoned him. I'll never forget that conversation with God. Like, here, back of the head, wake up, son. I'm right here. It's like the beautiful poem, Footsteps. God carried me when I couldn't carry myself. And God carries each and every one of us when we cannot carry ourselves. And again, we're never alone. From a guy that thought he was going to literally probably die at a young age as an alcoholic, instead on December 20th this year, I will celebrate 4 years of continuous sobriety. It's the most awesome feeling. It really is. The things that I strive for today are to be a better father, a better husband, a better Christian. Not necessarily in that order, because sometimes I need to be a better Christian to be a better father or to be a better husband. And sometimes I have to literally give myself that pop on the back of the head and say, whoa, your ego's not your amigo, buddy. Stop and put the pride aside. Ask for help. Because one thing I have learned is when we ask, we get more blessing than we've ever known. Because we put our weaknesses out there and people can see the weakness and they help to build us up. And to just again to realize that we're not alone. I want to thank everybody for allowing me to speak today. I hope everybody got a little something out of this.